Hola, welcome to Cancun in Mexico. It's time to talk rugby again, and in this video we're going to be reviewing the game between the South African Springboks and the Argentinian Pumas. Hello everyone and welcome to Inside Rugby. My name's Mark and I'm coming to you live today from Cancun in Mexico. It's a beautiful day and it's a great day to talk about rugby. So if you want to follow rugby this season all the way through the World Cup and the remaining warm-up games, Inside Rugby is your channel. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Let's move on, and what a game it was in Johannesburg yesterday. Lots to talk about, but I just want to say before we get underway that the Nulavu Youth Choir did a fantastic job warming up the hearts of those in the Emirates Airlines Stadium yesterday in Johannesburg before the game got underway. Fantastic to hear them singing and bringing that real flavour of Africa to world rugby. Absolutely love that, folks. Good job over there from the youth choir. So this game was the third and final game in the Rugby Championship for 2023 for both South Africa and Argentina. A lot on the line for Argentina in this one because they'd come off a good win against Australia in that last minute, and it would have got their motivation very high to come over to South Africa and try and take their first win in Johannesburg. They've only won once before in Africa, and that was in Durban, so they were looking for a win on the high veld and seeing if they could pull that one off. Now unfortunately the game got underway and within 30 seconds we had a little bit of a tragedy. Grant Williams got hit when the Argentinian fullback was running through trying to catch a high ball. It was just one of those 50-50 balls, and you know, a lot of speculation around whether or not it was legal or not illegal. I don't want to get into that. The fact was the referee made the call on it, and unfortunately Grant Williams, who was on for the starting 15 for South Africa, had to be stretchered off with concussion. Not a great thing. I was really looking forward to seeing Grant Williams play in this game. I think he's a great player. He brings speed and tenacity to the Springboks backline, and I was really looking forward to see what he could do in this particular game, but I think he's going to recover okay. He had to sit the rest of the game out. We saw him on the bench during the game, so he was okay. What I was interested to see in this game was what strategy both teams brought to the game. I thought the Springboks were going to be looking for a rather tight game and to dominate up front, and then once they achieved that, they were going to let their backs loose on Argentina. Argentina, on the other hand, I thought were going to play an open game to try and disrupt that settled play of the Springboks, try to be spontaneous and open with the ball that they did get, and try to put pressure on that way. And that was the way that it basically started off, and you could see that the Argentinians had an intent to run the ball. They put a lot of phases together in the beginning of the game, and they went ahead 6 points to nil after two penalty kicks from Santiago Carreras. And that man we'll talk a lot about in the rest of this video. Yeah, the Springboks didn't get that dynamic, intensive start that I think Jacques Nienaber would have wanted them to have in those first few minutes. So it came down to a bit of an arm wrestle, really. Lebok got a penalty back for the Springboks to bring it back to 6-3, but then Etzebeth went over for a fantastic try, playing his 112th game this weekend, and that was his 5th try that he had scored in test matches for South Africa. I thought he had a stormer of a game yesterday. Etzebeth, he was back to his best, all over the place, leading by example, even though he wasn't the captain yesterday, but he was leading that forward pack, and he was prominent throughout the game. Great game from that guy, and really looking forward to seeing what he can bring in that Springbok jersey come the Rugby World Cup. Now, if you watched the All Blacks play Australia before this game, you were hoping that we were going to see another open running game of rugby, but this game seemed to be rather disconnected as that first half unfolded. It was going to and fro. It wasn't very connected in terms of passages of play, and I think Andrew Brace, the Irish referee, had a little bit of trouble controlling it from time to time as well. He was a little bit indecisive on some of his decisions, and he got to the stage during that first half where he told both teams to be quiet. There was too much interference going on in terms of asking for decisions and things to be changed, and then he started to get on top of it. But I'm sure my South African friends will have something to say about the refereeing. I want to stay away from that stuff because you can't change it. We can say it was good or bad, but at the end of the day, that's what happens. So Santiago Carreras went off in that first half with an HIA review, and Albanese came on in his replacement, and things started to change a little bit in the game. It felt as though that without Santiago Carreras's positional play and his influence on the game, that the Argentinians seemed to lose a little bit of direction and play around the park, and that's when I think we saw the South Africans start to get on top. I was extremely impressed by Malcolm Marx. He was playing fantastic in the breakdowns and the clearouts, getting in there and disrupting the Argentinian ball. He won 3 or 4 turnovers that way, and also Dwayne Vermeulen was doing very, very well in the breakdowns as well. Captain this weekend, of course, doing a fantastic job in there. So even though the South Africans, a few of their individual players were doing well, it didn't seem as though it was gelling in that first half as a team effort. It seemed to be a little bit disconnected, but I think a lot had to do with the way that the Argentinians were playing the game, and I think they brought the right kind of game to the South Africans to disrupt them. And it was only going to be if the South Africans were able to get good fast ball and get it out to their wider backs that I thought they were going to be able to open up this game. And ironically, it was one of their backs, but he was attached to the forward pack at the time and pushing over a maul to score the try. Damien Delalande scored a great try for the Springboks after intense forward pressure close to the Argentinian line. So that was after the 27th minute of the first half, and Mani Lebok got the conversion over, so we went out to 15 points to 6 to the Springboks. And I guess one thought at that stage, getting closer to half-time, that the Springboks were going to mount a serious amount of pressure on the Argentinians and run away with this game, but that wasn't going to be the case. And as they showed against the Wallabies 2 weeks ago in Sydney, the Argentinians had other plans, particularly for the remainder of that first half and going into the second half. An interesting stat that came out of that first half was the Argentinians did double the amount of tackles to what the South Africans did, and this was the Argentinians just trying to keep pace with the game. The South Africans were winning ball from the set pieces. Their scrum was big and powering the Argentinians, and I thought that this was an area that the Argentinians were possibly going to capitulate, was under the constant pressure of the South African forwards. But we got to that kind of scenario where it looked like the Springboks were going to do it, but they just weren't opening that can of opportunity them to unleash on the Argentinians. And once Argentina got another penalty, they came back to 15-9 with just 2 minutes to go in the first half, and all of a sudden we thought, well, hang on a minute, this could be game on. The Argentinians just need to score a try and we've got a close game on our hands. So at half time it was interesting that the two teams, for me, went into the sheds that close together. More great South African entertainment at half-time at the Emirates Airlines Stadium in Johannesburg yesterday, and anybody from watching from around the world would have been impressed with that. Gave us memories of the World Cup in South Africa and all the great dancing and African culture that we got to share from across the world. It was really, really good stuff. Now, as the second half started, we were hoping to see some kind of dominant start in this game. It had been a bit of an arm wrestle up to half-time. And in the 48th minute, there was a crucial penalty kick at goal from Santiago Carreras that actually missed. And I thought this was a pivotal time in the game, because in this particular game, the Argentinians had left out Buffelli at fullback and gone with Santiago Carreras as their goal kicker. And I thought that this might be a problem, and so it turned out, because he ended up missing 3 crucial kicks at goal, 2 penalties and a conversion attempt. And if you put that 9 points onto the final score, it could have been a lot different for Argentina. However, it wasn't. And the second half got underway with that missed penalty opportunity. But that missed penalty actually seemed to spur on the Argentinians. And over the next 6 or 7 minutes, they really had some great phases of play. And I was starting to think at this stage, okay, Argentina are not going to go away in this game. They're going to keep the pressure on. And much like they did against Australia 2 weeks ago, their belief was there. They believed that they could get something out of this game, and you saw the forwards really putting it to the South Africans. And I think as the game went on, the Argentinian scrum started to improve, their set pieces started to improve, and they started to put more and more phases of play together. And as a result of that, the South Africans ended up with a huge tackle count in the second half, and South Africa unleashed their bench around the 58-minute mark. And I think the best player to come on off that bench for this game was Kwagga Smith. He had a great 20 minutes or so on the field. He was in there disrupting the Argentinians, and he caught some vital turnover ball as well, which made a difference at the time. The Argentinians were on attack, and it looked like they were going to spread it wide to be able to score a try, but Kwagga Smith got in there and disrupted that play. So I felt, but it was in the 60th minute that the game got away from Argentina with an intercept try that led to Faf de Klerk taking off down the field on the right hand side, passing it outside to Manie Libbok, and Libbok took off and scored a try for South Africa. Against the run of play, Argentina were putting pressure on the South African line. It looked like the Argentinians might get in for a score, but South Africa got the intercept and took off and scored a try. That short passage of play was definitely against the momentum of the game that was going the Argentinians' way at the time, and South Africa, Manie Libbok, got the conversion of his own try, and South Africa went out to 22-9, and everybody probably thought with 20 minutes to go, game over, nothing to look at here. But again, Argentina didn't go away, and in the 72nd minute, when Damian Zealander got yellow carded for a high shot, it took the Springboks down to 14 men, and it was going to be that way for the remainder of the game. So it was really, really interesting. Lucano arm came on for South Africa, and there was a bit of a rejiggle in the back line at that stage. And it was a question of whether or not the Argentinians were going to be able to do something in the last 10 minutes of this game. And boy, did they start to put the pressure on the South Africans. Raid after raid of the line. Their forwards keeping it in close, and I was really impressed with the way they controlled the ball. They were very, very strong and going in low towards the line, and I really thought that they were going to score a try in those last few minutes. And that's exactly what happened. After a couple of those foraging raids close to the South African line, the ball came out to Mateo Carreras. He stepped inside, got through the Springboks defence, got over for a try. Carreras got the conversion, and we were back to 22 points to 21 with just a few minutes to go in the game. Peter Steph du Toit was fantastic in defence for the Springboks. He got the highest tackle count of the day for the Springboks. Thought he had a really, really good game when not too many others really shone out other than Etzebeth. Dwayne Vermeulen was good around the park, but again, it was one of those games where collectively the Springboks didn't seem to bring it as a team on this particular occasion. Yeah, there were glimpses of brilliance from different players from time to time. Cheslin Colby got a few breaks down the wing, but again, the Argentinians were there with good defence, and they had been really working on that, as Michael Checker had been saying in the press conferences. So the Springboks held on to win this game, and I think other than an intercept try in that second half, they didn't really look like giving too much of a hard time to the Argentinians, and the Argentinians had a wealth of possession. They were unfortunate with their kicking percentages yesterday, which really made the difference in this game, and they ended up finishing third in the Rugby Championship this year. But a really good display by Argentina, I thought, and going into the World Cup, I don't think any team can dismiss this team. I think Michael Checker's team is improving every game. They stepped it up again from when they played Australia 2 weeks ago. They were a better team this week against the Springboks. I thought Manie Libbok had a good game without being brilliant. Jesse Kriel was good. He made a couple of breaks down the outside, was pretty good in defence as well. And again, I think the Argentinian forwards were the ones that were dominating and keeping it close to the ruck. So the South African backs didn't really have too much to do. We saw Damien Willemse come on with 90 seconds to go. Not sure what the point of that was, but I guess the Springboks needed some fresh legs in there for the last couple of minutes to keep the Argentinians out. So overall, a good, impressive game by the Argentinians. They'll be kicking themselves they didn't get this one and have their first ever win in Johannesburg. South Africa will probably feel as though they got away with one here, if we're being fair about everything. They did get the win though. They go into second place in the Rugby Championship, which New Zealand All Blacks now win for the second year in a row. So that's it for the Rugby Championship, and some pretty interesting games. I think in a couple of months' time we're going to forget all about this Rugby Championship. We're going to be talking, of course, all about the Rugby World Cup, the pool games, and then heading into the knockout stage, which we expect to see these teams playing in unless there's any major upsets. Now don't forget, I'm going to be following all the Rugby World Cup and the warm-up games right here on Inside Rugby. So if you want to stick around by hitting that little subscribe button, then I'll be here all the way through those matches. I think summarising the Rugby Championship this year, we saw a New Zealand team that was building momentum, sticking with their combinations for the most part. And I think next week in Dunedin, we're going to see probably some changes within the All Blacks to give some new guys a bit of an opportunity before we head off to the World Cup. I think in Argentina, we saw a team that's on the improve. Their trajectory is good. Michael Cheika must be happy, even though they didn't get that win yesterday in South Africa. I think he will be happy with what he's seen from this Argentinian team, and he talks about the culture, the brotherhood that exists within this team. And I think heading into the World Cup, that's going to be a really, really important element that keeps this Argentinian team going forward. For the Springboks, a very dominant display against Australia in that first game. We didn't see that level of intensity, so Jacques Nienaber will go away with his team and try and get these guys on point to kick off into the World Cup. Of course, we've got the warm-up games. They'll play Wales and the All Blacks before the Rugby World Cup starts. But again, I think those games are going to be an opportunity to fine-tune some of the combinations for the Springboks team. No doubt about it that Eddie Jones has the most work to do as the coach of the Australian team. 3 losses on the trot, and facing the All Blacks again next weekend in Dunedin in New Zealand is going to be another challenge, another hurdle for Eddie Jones and those Wallabies to overcome. So they finished last in this year's Rugby Championship, and they've also lost the Bledisloe Cup for another year. So whilst it was an intriguing Rugby Championship this year, I'm really looking forward now to getting into the warm-up games and also the start of the Rugby World Cup. I'm going to be making various videos as we lead up to the World Cup, sharing my thoughts around different teams, different players, and even the coaches. And I've got some interviews coming up with some international players as well, right here on Inside Rugby, to get their insights to what's going to happen at the Rugby World Cup. So make sure you don't miss it out. So there we go, that's it for the Rugby Championship. I hope you've enjoyed my videos. If you have, stick around, and I look forward to the next games that we're going to see next weekend. I'll be doing a wrap up on those. Argentina playing South Africa in Buenos Aires, and as I said, New Zealand playing the Wallabies in Dunedin in New Zealand. So yeah, I'll be covering all those games here on Inside Rugby. So that's it for this video, folks. I just want to wish you all a happy remaining weekend. Stay safe, stay well, and remember, enjoy your rugby. See you soon.